Let's take this show on the road. Same-ish, different day. I'll be bored out my mind. Hometown, love my place.
Hey friends, let's dye some yarn. Today I'm going to dye some DK merino, superwash merino. And the first thing we're going to do is soak it. So we're going to add some citric acid and about 6 liters of water into my plastic container. You do not need one that's this big. It just needs to be enough so you can soak the yarn properly. And we were going to do 4 skeins today. The reason I'm adding citric acid is because it is what makes the dye adhere to the yarn in combination with the heat and the dye itself. So I'm adding about half a tablespoon to the soaking water. We'll be adding more later when we start dyeing. I'm going to set that aside. And we're adding in the water. Another one. That's 4 liters. I'm going to add one more to make sure all the yarn will be properly soaked. And let's see. There we go. Before tucking the yarn into the water to soak, I'm going to open up the skeins. Or hanks is actually the proper word, but these days everybody calls them skeins. I'm adding a zip tie to each one to help detangle them if they get tangled with the other skeins in the water or to themselves, which sometimes happens. And I'm giving each one a separate zip tie. Opening that up. And that's 2. And we're doing the 3rd one. There we go. The yarn is also tied off in several places like this. That's why we have all these bits of yarn hanging out from the side. They are supposed to be there. It also helps to avoid too much tangling. And the 4th one. There we go. I'm going to switch sides here and grab all my skeins. Like so. And we will put them in the water. And I'm just pushing the yarn down to make sure it gets properly soaked. We need all of it to be wet, because if it's not, if there are dry patches of yarn, the dye will not stick to the yarn in those places. We want it to be properly soaked all the way through. There we go. I'm going to let this sit for at least half an hour and then we'll be ready to dye. The yarn has been soaking for about an hour now and we are getting ready to dye. We are going to be using this pan to dye in today. So first of all, we are going to add in some citric acid and then we are going to transfer our yarn to the pan. But we're not adding the water just yet, because we're actually adding dye to the water before adding the water to the pan today. So I'm going to start off by adding a tablespoon of citric acid to the pan. And then we are going to transfer the yarn. Just squeezing out some of the water so I don't make a mess. Just adding it into the pan, like so. And the citric acid will dissolve as soon as water hits it. And there we go. I'm trying to get the yarn as evenly placed as I can, like so. And next we are going to mix the dyes. So when dyeing, you need the dyes. We're going to be using 2 different dyes today. I have got a hot pink from Pro Chemical and Dye and a sky blue from the same brand. I have an old yogurt container, empty yogurt container, that I've just put some water in so that I can put my spoons in. I have a big one to poke the yarn while I'm dyeing. Some teaspoons for picking up the dye. I'm going to use this to mix the dye with the water. A face mask for protecting my airways. Always use one of these when you're working with the dyes because this is a very fine powder and you do not want to inhale it and put it in your lungs. I've got some gloves and I've got 2 measuring cups with a little bit of water in because we're going to mix in the dyes first with a little bit of water and then we're going to top it off with more water. So let's start with that. We're going to put on the mask first. And then we're going to start with the blue dye. And I'm grabbing just a little bit. I may not even take that much. A little usually goes a long way with these dyes. I'm going to mix it. And it's a very light color right now. We're going to let it sit for a little bit before adding any more, because sometimes they need to sit a little bit and then they will kick in a lot more. So we're going to let that one sit and develop a little bit while we mix the other one. And we're grabbing a little bit of hot pink. So, I'm not using all of it. This is a very powerful color. And we're mixing it. Make sure to rinse your whatever item you use to blend, to mix your colors in between. That is a very powerful pink. We're going to rinse the mixer a little. I think the pink is quite enough. We're going to add in more blue though. I want a deeper blue color. So I'm adding more. And we're mixing it again. You see that? We're starting to get there, but I think maybe we will add a little bit more of the blue because the pink one was very powerful. I'm adding quite a lot this time. We'll do 2 bright colors. And just remember to never use tools for dyeing that you are using when cooking food. Always have separate tools. There we go. Now we're going to add in water. Top them out. And we'll see what we got. I'm filling these measuring cups to the top, so there's 2 liters in each. And I probably won't be using all of that. There we go. Our dye mixes are ready, and we are ready to start pouring it on the yarn. Now here comes the tricky part. What I'm thinking is that we're going to do a 2-colored yarn, half of it in one color and the other half in the other. But when you start pouring water into the canteen, it will travel all the way through. So you need to start very slowly so that the dye will be soaked up by the yarn. And you start on each end and you slowly work your way towards the middle. And I'm going to turn on the heat right away. I'm also turning on the fan. And we're starting with some blue. On this end. So, we're going in with pink on the other end. I'm going back with blue on this side. And the pink on the other side. I'm still pouring towards the end mostly, because the dyes will travel. I'm going in with more of the blue since that's the lighter color. And the pink one is very dominant. I'm going to put those aside. Now we're going to get our spoon. Start pushing the yarn down to make sure that we get dye on everything. I'm still staying close to the edge on this side. here there seems to have been, you can see the blue there. That is a speck of dye that didn't dissolve in the measuring cup. It dissolved once it hit the pan. It's a thing that sometimes happens with blue dyes. I've never had any other dye do that. Blues sometimes do. So beware of that. You might want to mix your blue dye ahead of time to make sure it dissolves completely before adding it. You can absolutely do that. I'm just poking the yarn to make sure I get dye everywhere. And it is starting to heat up. Turning down the heat a little bit. We'll have more spots of blue here. See? It's absolutely fine. We'll just call it a design element. That's the great thing about dyeing your own yarn. You decide what's right and what's wrong for you. I'm slowly working my way towards the middle, focusing mainly on this lighter color. And I'm turning the pan around to make sure it gets heated everywhere. We're just going to let it sit for a while so the water starts heating properly. And then we'll go in with a little more dye. I've decided to lean into the blue because I'm really liking this deeper blue that's happening here. So let's do some speckling. Oh, that's a lot. So I'm just grabbing some powder in my hand. I'm just going to go over it like so. There's a little bit too much water in the pan right now. So just going to spread out. But that's really what we want. Like so. We're going to give that a minute to hit. And we're still heating the water in the pan. Let's also go in with a little more pink. I'm just going to move the pan a little bit. So, I'm going in with some more pink over here on this side. So, I'm going to dab it to make sure I get dye in all the strands, even at the bottom. I'm squeezing it, pushing it around. Be careful when you do this because Now this is a superwash yarn, so it's not too sensitive, but keep it as a general rule. But especially if you are dyeing wool that is not superwash treated, you can easily felt it if you agitate it too much when it's hot. We got the blue spreading out here now. I'm making sure that I get dye into where the yarn is bent in each end, because there's a thicker amount of yarn there. So it's gonna need some extra help for the dye to penetrate through all the strands. Let's give the blue one a little bit of help. Dab it a little, make sure we have dye everywhere. All the strands, and at the bottom. We don't want too much white. We can have some white. It's fine. It's a bit of a summery white to this yarn. You can just play around with it. You can have like some marled results, like I'm doing here, or you can go for more unison color, like we have with the pink. That's the great thing about dyeing yarn. You can just play around and do pretty much what you feel like. Now we're getting to a point where the colors are almost meeting in the middle, or starting to meet in some places. So we're going to let it sit and continue heating it until the entire pan is hot, because we need all the yarn to be hot in order for the dye and the citric acid to react with each other and make the dye stick to the yarn. Water is starting to heat up properly now. I'm going to add in one last bit of pink dye in the pan. There we go. Now we're just letting it all heat up, and we can set it aside to cool. All the water is heated up now and all the yarn. And to make sure, I put on a pair of gloves and I just poke the water. Don't recommend that you do it this way, but this is how I'm checking that it's actually hot everywhere. Find your own method that works for you. That's good. So I'm going to turn off the heat and I'm going to set the pan aside to cool. And it's very important that it cools completely before rinsing it, otherwise you will shock the yarn. Of course, especially important if you're dyeing wool that is not superwash treated, but keep it as a general rule even for these. So let it cool completely and then we'll come back and rinse the yarn. The yarn has cooled completely now and it is time to rinse. I'm going to be using my plastic container in the sink. You can rinse it directly in the sink if you want to. And I will be using soak, which is my go-to for when rinsing yarns. You don't need to have this. You can use dishwasher, dish soap or shampoo or conditioner or whatever you like. I prefer this one. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to put some cold water in our rinsing tub. So we're going to start rinsing our yarn and see what we got. I'm going to want to have it about halfway full. I want the yarn to have a little bit of space to move. Something like that. And I'm just going to grab one of the zip ties and pull up a skein. I'm squeezing out some of the water just so that I don't make a mess everywhere. I'll put it in the rinsing tub. And the next one. And as you can see, the water is completely clear. So the dye has exhausted completely for this one, which we're very happy about. And the last one. There we go. I'm going to empty this. There we go. Now I'm just pushing down the yarn into the water, not agitating it too much because I don't want it to tangle. And you really don't need to work it much at all. Let me move the camera a little bit. There we go. And let's find that zip tie again. And I'm dunking it a couple of times. Make sure to also rinse the zip tie because sometimes there's dye caught in those. And I'm squeezing out the water. I'm not wringing it or twisting it in any way, I'm just squeezing. On the second one. Squeezing out water. It's a lovely color. Maybe something, a sweater for a child. Could be nice. Third skein. This is very soft, since it's a DK merino, so it's a very soft and nice yarn. And let's see if we can find the last zip tie. There we go. And squeezing out water. There we are. And I'm going to empty the tub. Now we're going to do it again. We're working with cold water the whole time because the yarn is cold. Something like that. Let's give it a little bit more. There we go. And we just add it in again. Trying to place them next to each other just to make it easier to pick them up and try to avoid them tangling. And I'm just pushing it down a bit. Like so. And we grab the zip tie again. Give it a couple of dunks. If the yarn does tangle, dunking it in the water like this is actually one of the best ways to detangle the skein. There will inevitably be the odd skein that does tangle. And squeezing out the water, still not wringing or using any force, just squeezing. Yeah. And the third one. And the last one. There we go. That's it. Now we are going to hang the yarn to dry. And I'm just drying it on a regular clothes rack. So it'll take a couple of days. And we'll be back to see what the finished result is. There we have it. Our pink and blue, light blue yarn. It came out very lovely, I think. I think this will make a very pretty summer top, or maybe a sweater for a child. Or why not an adult? Why not? Why not? If you do try to dye this color way, please let me know. Tag me in social media. I would love to see what you make. And also, if you knit with it, tag me. I'd love to see that too. So that's it for now, and I'll see you in the next one.